Cleopatra was a woman of great cunning, charm, and beauty who built an empire and made it the greatest empire in history. She was the youngest woman to rule Egypt. Her empire enjoyed wealth, riches, and luxury during her reign, giving her an enviable power never seen before. Legend has it that in just 10 years, Alexander the Great built a vast empire that included ancient Egypt, making him highly regarded and respected. However, after his tragic death, the empire fell into a state of war, with several commanders and generals vying for control of vast territories. In the end, no agreement was reached during the war. The great empire was thus divided, and the Egyptian empire was first commanded by the Macedonian general Ptolemy, and the Ptolemaic dynasty was established. As the years passed, the empire grew and established itself as one of the wealthiest empires. Then Ptolemy, the 12th king, took over the pharaonic power, and his wife Cleopatra ruled with his 6th king in the city of Alexandria. Ptolemy XII entered into a grand alliance with his chief adversary. Although he remained in power, he proved to be a man guided by peace rather than war. Over the years, the love between the pharaoh and Cleopatra's 6 deepened. 5 children were born. Ptolemy 13, Ptolemy 14, Arsinoe 4, Berenice 4, and Cleopatra 7. Cleopatra showed great interest in education during her childhood. Therefore, she received a very privileged academic education. She was too interested in education. No one in the Ptolemaic dynasty had to learn as much as this wise woman, but her teachers were astonished. She was impressed by Cleopatra's intelligence in learning letters, art, war, history, geometry, mathematics, and languages, and she mastered her 8 languages, including Egyptian, making her the first in her family to do so. I became someone I could talk to. This language. From her early years without an interpreter, she was passionate about oratory and philosophy. Thanks to it, she was able to express herself with her great posture, grace with appropriate gestures, and very sweet voice, showing her great intelligence and education. Cleopatra enjoyed visiting the great library of Alexandria. The beautiful maiden took advantage of every moment to prepare and learn any art, since she felt complete in this place, where numerous books useful for her education and culture were kept. When Cleopatra grew up, she was described as a woman of extraordinary beauty. Never before had Cleopatra enjoyed all the privileges of Alexandria as the daughter of a ruler. She was surrounded by servants and guards, and her days were surrounded by abundance. Cleopatra lived in a huge palace with beautiful gardens. Where she went out to meditate and read, this great palace became the most luxurious palace in the whole Mediterranean, and the more the Ptolemaic dynasty grew, the more the kingdom expanded. Years later, a great misfortune came to the family of Ptolemy, and the empire's great disturbances disturbed the people, as they were dissatisfied by the annexation of Cyprus by Rome. The pharaoh had greatly rejected his wife for the decisions he had taken with the Roman people, so Cleopatra VI, along with his eldest daughter, expelled the pharaoh of Egypt, stripping him of his title for several years. The wife of Ptolemy XII ruled Alexandria with the help of her daughter, Berenice Cleopatra. For her part, she closely observed the role now developed by her mother and sister, and from that moment on, the throne captivated her with a great sense of power, and satisfaction touched her soul. When she thought that someday she would be the queen of Alexandria, time passed and a terrible illness made the flamboyant queen decay, and soon after she died. Cleopatra VI had passed away, and all the people, accompanied in grief for their queen, who had departed to the beyond, her children, wept bitterly about the loss of their mother. This was a severe blow to the Alexandrian Empire, which was maintained despite some internal problems, as is the case with family successors. Immediately after her death, according to tradition, her eldest daughter was to hold the title of queen, and initially, King Berenice IV of Egypt assumed her power. Berenice played a very important role, and everything went well. However, her reign as ruler was short-lived, as it was her father who ended her monarchy. His father-daughter quarrels became a major controversy during his reign. Several revolts caused great damage in Egypt, and the threat to the Berenice monarchy continued. However, she did not give up the throne. Cleopatra, with her thirst for power and her desire to become queen, goes to Rome, where her father was exiled, and plots her return, ending Berenice's reign there. She found the help she was looking for. She offered him a large fortune if he would regain his position in Egypt, so a large army accompanied Ptolemy XII, better known as Alice, to Egypt. Then some things happened. This granted him access to the palace and restored his throne. Once he achieved his goal, the elite ordered the murder of his daughter Berenice, ending his reign in a very subtle way. The current Pharaoh of Egypt also regained his power after negotiating with the Roman army and making a deal, ordering the murder of all of Egypt's wealthy families to pay off their debts. Her daughter, Cleopatra, was proud. To take over, she secretly supported her father's every decision and closely watched his role as her pharaoh. She learned a lot about how to rule using her cunning and intelligence. At the age of 66, Elite suffered a breakdown in his health, and each day it worsened as he recovered from his serious illness. His most loyal and trusted advisors managed the kingdom. However, Elites never recovered but rather departed to the underworld, but before he died, the pharaoh gathered his sons and advisors and said, "The day of my death has come, and from now on my sons Cleopatra VII and Ptolemy XIII shall rule Alexandria despite the great pain caused by the death of her father." Cleopatra was too happy to have reached the throne. At last, the power was in her hands. However, the idea of marrying her brother was unpleasant to her, for at that time Cleopatra was 18 years old and her brother Ptolemy was only 13, but they had to comply with the laws of Egypt, and marriage between siblings was obligatory in royal cases. The empire was dressed in mourning and thus dismissed our leads, who despite his hard work as pharaoh left the empire, with several failures, but with this cunning made a great alliance with the Romans, so that their children should rule under the tutelage of these. At that time, Rome was being led by Julius Caesar, a very prestigious and important military and political figure in the empire, and with whom elites maintained great alliances. Cleopatra was too ingenious. Her government strategies at the beginning of her reign were amazing. However, Ptolemy XIII began to have airs of grandeur, and gradually wished to displace Cleopatra from the throne, thus wishing to rule alone all of Egypt. His interest in taking the throne alone was not only his idea, for behind him were his loyal advisors, who wished to exile Cleopatra, so they influenced Ptolemy to finish off the queen and remove her from power forever. Cleopatra, noticing her brother Ptolemy's unusual behavior, sensed his evil intentions and decided to take advantage of them. Due to the sympathy of the people and the resulting alliances with some enemy empires, Cleopatra approached several enemy leaders, especially the Romans, with the aim of gaining allies. Because Rome had a large kingdom at the time and was a great ally. When civil war broke out in Egypt, the monarch developed great friendships with several enemy chieftains and governors, especially the cunning Queen of Egypt, and formed a grand alliance with Pompey, a very important military commander in Rome. He was also the military commander of the kingdom. On the other hand, when Cleopatra was told that she would betray Egypt, she viewed the actions taken by her queen very badly. Pharaoh's advisors, Aquila, Pothinus, and Theodotus of Chaos, had him at their disposal. Because, due to his young age, they were the ones who practically ruled the kingdom. And they told Cleopatra to be removed from the throne. One day, when Cleopatra returned from her travels, Ptolemy declared his wife a traitor, drove her out in a riot, and tried to eliminate the queen, but Cleopatra's cunning was astounding. However, his wife managed to escape. Egypt was unharmed. Cleopatra sought asylum in Syria, which he had considered an ally for some time. There, she managed to gather several military personnel and complete a large army, which was soon to be used to rebuild her empire. However, troubles did not stop in Alexandria, where upheavals and small-scale battles destroyed parts of the empire, and Ptolemy's government was extremely dangerous to the pharaohs at the time, who were also under Cleopatra's influence. On the advice of his teachers, he set out in search of his sister with a large army to prevent her return to Egypt. Unfortunately, Ptolemy was out of luck. On his way, he received a strange message that Pompey, a Roman military officer and consul, had fled a rebellion after his defeat in Greece. Years before Pompey and Julius Caesar became close friends, he was on his way to Alexandria, where he was persecuted and murdered by Julius Caesar. However, several power struggles led to a rivalry between the two, forcing Pompey to seek new allies. After being defeated in order to protect himself from the wrath of the Roman army, Pompey came to the aid of the kingdom of Alexandria. He saw this as a sign of an alliance, with the empire being led by Alice's son, as he had helped the elites regain the status of pharaoh in the past and was also a good friend of the elites. Ptolemy would help him evacuate, and the pharaoh's advisors knew that by aiding and hiding Pompey, they would be ordering Roman warriors to war. So they bet on a better plan that would make them allies with Caesar's army. When the Roman consul was about to arrive, civil strife arose in Egypt, which increased the concern of the pharaoh and his allies. The arrival of Pompey put the kingdom of Ptolemy in disquiet, for his advisors believed that if they kept the Roman council alive, he would help return Cleopatra to Egypt. Theodotus of Chios, who had to make the best decision for Alexandria regarding Pompey, met behind closed doors, and the three remained undecided and disoriented because they could not find a solution. Then, after a long silence, Theodotus, with a smiling face, said, "The dead do not bite." He nodded his head, touched the shoulder of his companions, and said, "At last, we have the solution. We will ally ourselves with Julius Caesar, for his army is very powerful and will benefit us more than an old consul. As far as Pompey is concerned, as soon as he touches Egyptian territory, we will get rid of him." Aquila's and partners supported the idea of Theodotus, and thus made known to the pharaohs such a treacherous solution. Ptolemy and his allies were happy with what was decided and were waiting for the arrival of the Romans. When they knew that he was about to arrive on Egyptian soil, a large retinue went out to receive him. However, Pompey believed that this contingent would be welcomed as soon as they set foot on Egyptian soil. He was violently attacked by several soldiers and cried out for help. He finally died, sensing Alexandria's great betrayal. The Egyptians cut off his head. A few days passed, and Julius Caesar and his army reached Ptolemy's empire. When he entered the palace, he was received with a grand banquet and the best treatment compared to other visitors. One of the royal advisors carried a shining silver tray, and as soon as the Roman troops came in, he handed it to him with a bow as a sign of hospitality and alliance. Julius Caesar took it, picked up his cloak, covered it, and was surprised to see the eerie find watching his crew. The sacrifice the Egyptians gave him was the slaughtered head of Pompey. When the Romans saw the consul's violent death, they were so upset that they stabbed him in the hand. He lamented the great loss of the Roman Empire. Despite the difference in power between the two, Julius Caesar liked Pompey as a member of his family and tearfully regretted not being able to say goodbye to him under dire circumstances that led to his own death. He glared at the advisor who presented Pompey's head and ordered him to be executed for the murder of a Roman consul. The advisors could not imagine what Julius Caesar would have ordered. If he had given the order openly, the Egyptians could have waged war and destroyed this small garrison before the Roman dictator could execute him. He settled in the royal palace and offered to meet the kings of Alexandria, so Ptolemy returned and went in search of Cleopatra. At Julius Caesar's call, he left a small army at vigil in case his sister Cleopatra showed up. Meanwhile, Cleopatra was thinking of returning to Alexandria when her brilliant idea came to her mind. She was in danger, and she was not allowed to appear before the Alexandrian guards, who had strict orders not to allow her inside. They can even die at their own hands. If she dared to return, it would be to carry out her secret plan. She sought out Apollodorus, her faithful friend and servant, and asked for his help, and he immediately agreed because Apollodorus adored Cleopatra and helped her in everything. She decided even the Sicilians would form a large network of informants throughout Egypt. Cleopatra told him, "Help me to return to Alexandria. I know that Julius Caesar is in the palace, and I wish to ally myself with him for my return." She said to her, "Count on me, dear Cleopatra. Tell me what I must do. You will get the finest carpet you can find, and we will send it as a gift to Caesar, an exotic and unsurpassed gift for when he unrolls it. I will be the greatest surprise," said Cleopatra. The Egyptians gathered a troop of her men to make the delicate delivery at the hands of the Romans. Apollodorus found a beautiful carpet, and immediately Cleopatra ordered them to leave in a small boat bound for Alexandria. They were within a few hours of arriving in Egypt. Apollodorus' son will define the carpet, and immediately Cleopatra laid down on it and gave them the order to wrap it up and tie it carefully. His plan was far-fetched. However, Cleopatra's intelligence was impressive. She had faith that her strategy would work. The monarch would be wrapped in the carpet, and thus no one would suspect, nor see her enter Alexandria. So when they arrived, they passed all the filters until they reached the royal palace, where Julius Caesar was, because he had taken command of the empire and was putting in order several issues that unbalanced Egypt, with the excuse that they were carrying a gift from an ally of the Romans.